What's going on, y'all? This is Mike Brown, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode of The Art of Letting Go. This week, we have a special episode brought to you by the Poet Life and the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. Every year, at least 45,000 African Americans are dying of tobacco use. We know the power that art holds in shaping the world, and with this podcast episode, we are using our voices to fight against big tobacco in the Black community. So thank you for tuning into this episode and enjoy the show. An addiction is defined as a strong inclination to do, use, or indulge in something repeatedly. John shares with us his origin story of how he started smoking cigarettes, became addicted, and how he overcame.
My earliest memory of smoking a cigarette is actually when I was a kid. I have an aunt that smoked my whole life, and my mom, I've seen her try smoking on and off, and it's always just looked cool. And I used to be home alone after school a lot. So I remember I was home alone, and my mom had a vase on top of the fireplace that had a pack of cigarettes in it. I don't know who it belonged to, but I remember trying to light one of them and smoke it. And I remember it feeling stupid. And that's been a theme for me in life. Every time I try to do something that I deem cool, I don't like it at first, and I keep trying because I want to know why people like this so much. So I remember that first time just thinking, this is gross. Why do people do this?
Little did John know that his childhood curiosity would follow him throughout his life.
I remember a lot of my friends in my early 20s were cigarette smokers. Like about 3 of them were cigarette smokers pretty consistently. And then when I went to audio engineering school, most of the engineers were smokers. So I would spend a lot of time in social settings with smokers. And in those spaces were where I would think it'd be cool to like, let me take a pull. And I remember those friends used to always tell me like, no, you're a singer. You don't even smoke. Let me take a pull just to feel cool. And that definitely is between 18 and 20 is when I really started to give them a shot. And when I was introduced to like the Lucy spots in New York, which is where like the bodegas that'll sell you a single cigarette for like 50 cents. That's when I started to that was my gateway of like the social one-off smoking kind of became I want my own, and I would go buy them there.
As John grew in his independence, so did the habit of smoking. John found smoking to be a source of both validation and a tool for coping.
I knew it was an addiction when I was convincing myself that I wasn't a smoker. You know, when I was clearly smoking 2 or 3 cigarettes a week, you know, even more if that was a social week, and telling myself, well, I'm not a smoker because I don't buy packs. And then especially when it was like the dead of winter and I'm getting up to go to the Lucy spot to buy a cigarette, to smoke in the cold, or when I was starting to equate smoking as a relief from stress and anxiety, I would start to register like, oh, this might be a problem because I'm turning to this thing to make me feel better, to relieve stress. And at the same time, there was also a part of me that thought it made me look cool. So I was looking up to artists like Rihanna and Amy Winehouse and Chris Brown, who all smoked cigarettes throughout their careers, or like every artist that wants to be edgy in a photo shoot pulls out a pack of cigarettes. And I always joke that I'm a fan of pop culture, probably even before I'm an artist. So I think I used to internalize a lot of that as like, Rihanna looks so cool.
It may have looked cool, but John wasn't all the way comfortable with the habit.
I realized it was an issue for sure. Probably 22, I remember actually being one of the first times, 22, 23, being one of the first times that I told the doctor that I felt like I had an issue, and then giving me nicotine gum and trying to deter me.
As John started to work on overcoming this addiction, he started to ask himself why. Why did he choose smoking?
It was definitely something I would turn to in moments of great stress. And I think when I got to LA and had a lot more time alone and a lot more stress, I saw it come up a lot more. But the only thing that ever made me want to stop was myself. No gum, no nothing. A lot of people didn't know I smoked for a good chunk of my life. So there was no shame there to make me feel bad about it. I think it really, the only thing that deterred me was starting to realize the impact it had on my voice.
Just as anyone would do that wanted to do better in their lives, John started to do work on himself and overcoming his addiction.
I had to get my life right. I think the tools that helped me stop smoking didn't specifically target smoking. They were tools to get my life together that ended up, as a result, weaning me off of smoking, which was going to therapy, meditating, journaling, really tapping in with the greater issues in my life and understanding that the smoking and other addictions, food, masturbation, were all symptoms of me trying to numb myself or trying to distract myself from greater things that were bothering me. Career woes, relationship woes, financial woes. So yeah, I would definitely credit therapy and meditation for helping me address things in my life that eventually led to me to stop smoking.
Therapy is a beautiful tool that can be used to find the root of a problem and both heal it and grow past it. And though John has stopped smoking, his healing journey with his addiction to tobacco has not been linear.
I have a few times used smoking as a way to check in, and I think talk about tools. I have a friend who has taught me that throughout life there are certain things he uses as check-in points, be it music. And for me, I think smoking has been a check-in point for me over the last year and a half of like, do I need this? So I remember times where I would smoke and it'd be like, I feel free. And in the last year and a half, when I have tried it, probably I want to say about 3 or 4 times, maybe like every 4 months, I don't feel that anymore. I don't feel that sense of relief. I immediately feel like, oh, I remember why I stopped doing this. And that feels good. But yeah, the goal would be to not even have that check-in anymore.
John's journey to overcome his smoking addiction has been an inspiring one. We asked John, what advice would he give to someone who is trying to overcome an addiction?
I think any type of addiction at large is always a symptom of something else. So specifically with smoking, but if anybody has anything they're trying to kick, really try to address the greater issue that you are that you are pacifying with that addiction. So go to therapy, get into meditation. Trying to quit cold turkey is not for everybody, so I understand. And there are a lot of really great resources out there. There's nicotine gum. There are a lot of companies are trying out different vape and pod alternatives for people who have the oral fixation or even just the fidgeting addiction. So just do your research. But I think that the first step would be just get help, figure out what the smoke is doing for you and address that.
Wow, John's journey is so inspiring and a true testament of what it looks like to do the work and to overcome your obstacles. If you are struggling with addiction, know that there are resources out there available to you, and you are not alone on this journey. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Art of Letting Go. Peace.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming out today. Before we close out, does anybody have anything they would like to share?
Yeah, I do.
All right, man, you got the floor.
I've been out here trying to fight alone, and it's funny these same wrongs help me write this song. I'm admitting being an addict. Karma came back for me buying cigarette packets. See that smoke fill my grandmother's lungs, it's a habit. I miss the conversations we were having. I've been dealing with my own damage. Hopping app to app, I create my own sadness. Know when I create, I could take away my sadness. The hardest thing about living life in the shadows, admitting it. Also the thought of thinking I had to, my ignorance almost had me out here bad. My whole life I've been beating these addictions that I had.
Thank you, man, for sharing that. All right, guys, that's today's session, and I